You found your way to Blood Moon Radio. I'm Coralie, and this is where we follow the threads the world wants us to drop. This week, I'm joined by Juliette Jarvis. Our conversation wandered beautifully from the slow work of ethical creation and sacred business to the impossible balance of parenting while building something meaningful, to the quiet power of moving through the world with intention. We also touch on the darker edges, the modern witch trial that unfolds in family courts, and what it means to hold on to your magic through all of it. It's a tender, grounded conversation, one that reminds us that stillness too can be a form of resistance. Welcome to another episode of Blood Moon Radio. Today I am joined by Juliette Jarvis. She is the publisher of Raven Tongue magazine, an author, and a sacred living mentor. How's it going today, Juliette?
It's a great day today. Yeah, it's raining just a little bit and nice fall weather. And I'm waiting for our first editions to arrive. So it's a good day.
That's super exciting. I love the rain too. It's my favorite. I know people prefer sunshine, but I like a little bit of rain.
We are rainwater dependent at our house, so I really like the rain even more now. So it's laundry and dishes and showers and things like that. That's what that means for us.
So you're always excited for the rain. Can you share a little bit about your journey? What led you from hosting ceremonies to writing, publishing, and creating devotional arts?
It seems like a natural transition to me, accelerated by external factors, I guess. But, after spending a lot of time with outward-facing focus and working in community and sort of putting all my energy out, I became burnt out for sure. And it coincided with moving to a little cottage. And then COVID happened. And so an opportunity to just work on my own creative practice. That's for me, creativity practice are completely matched, really. And so it was just a way to really turn that energy back to myself and integrate and process a deepening of my own wisdom and my ways of being, recovering from burnout. And instead of having people come to gather with me, I sent it out to them. So it was what I needed.
I agree with you that creativity, play, those are all, that is magic, that is spirituality. And I think that we forget that. It's so easy in life to get caught up with what you have to do or what you need to survive in our society. And we lose track of, or we lose valuing and putting time into those things that I think are so much more important at the end of the day.
Yeah, it gets overlooked. It's always clean the house first and get all the priorities done first. And then, we begin to dry out inside, right? And I think in times past, so a lot of my work now is wrapped up in devotion or traditional skills. So spinning wool, growing flax, this kind of thing. And these are ways that took up a lot of our time in the past. And so there's a lot of ways that our magic making, our intention, our nervous system settling, our community, everything is wrapped up into that. The repetitiveness of, really lends itself well to trance or the intentional making. If you're crafting someone a shawl from scratch, there's a lot of opportunity to be putting in your intentional work into it, whether it's cleaning the poop and the vegetable matter and all these things, like out of it, it's very easy to equate it to clearing out the crap in life and then carding the fibers and having them all go the same direction. It's like, okay, we're making order of chaos and spinning I often say, I'm spinning my life into being, or I'm weaving my life into being as I'm working. And, and with that comes all the whatever it is you're working on, in your spiritual life, right? Calling in different energies, different medicines, setting certain intentions, and literally like weaving it right into the fabric. And it was ways that was just so commonplace to us. And that's gotten forgotten. It's gotten largely lost these days.
You describe yourself as bridging the tangible and the mystical, heritage skills, ritual objects, and then digital entrepreneurship. How do those threads weave together for you?
I know it sounds like an easy question, but it feels like it just feels like a natural unfolding, really. And I mean, the digital part, I mean, that's just our modern way of being an entrepreneur. I mean, it's one of those skills that's invaluable if you can become tech friendly and learn your way around. It really makes a difference for sure. And then, it really kind of balances also too, like the left brain and the right brain. We have the analytical side and the data side, and then we also have the creative and the playful and the um artistic side. So it's a nice balance for me.
Yeah, I do think at first, when we started to become more computer dependent, I think I felt like it was outside of how I like to do things. I preferred to write with a pen and paper, and I don't know, it felt cold. But in doing entrepreneurial work, I do feel like the digital realm opens up this very, you can see it, your creation of this other world or what you're putting out there, which is very fun. Like it is another way to create, right?
Yeah, yeah. If you can switch it to, instead of being like, oh no, I have to learn all these things, and find it as another creative outlet, it makes a big difference. And you don't have to stop writing with pen and paper. I still do. I mean, I have paper calendars and things like that, because really uh I really appreciate the tangible, right? The things that we can
Yeah.
hold. And that's part of why it's a print only magazine, is to give us something to hold again, and something to um, experience and have that tactile sense engaged.
And remember how fun it was when you would get mail back in, like, you know what I mean? Now you
Mhm.
get emails all the time or a text. You're not going to the mailbox to collect a letter from someone, not very often. Maybe around the holidays, someone will write you a
Always
card.
full,
So,
right? It's always opening that.
yeah.
Well, for me, we have to go and walk to a box, and so it's like opening the box and being like, oh, nope, just bills or junk. And so yeah, this being able to have some of that delight back. And then also, I mean, it's quite well relevant right now as our Canada Post is on strike. And some of that is because of a drop in snail mail. And so maybe we can do our postal workers a solid by sending more letters and postcards and things like that.
Oh my goodness, I haven't gotten a postcard in forever. Those are the best. The pictures of like, yes, feels like you're there with the person.
I've begun painting some. I'll be on a phone call with somebody, and I'll paint a little postcard while on the call with them. And then I haven't sent them out yet, but they're ready to go. That's where I always fall down, is I get everything ready and then I fail to put the stamp on and actually walk into the mailbox. But I'm endeavoring to do better.
That's a lovely idea. And also, I feel you on the getting everything ready and then, like, I don't know what it is, if it's a procrastination issue or well, just being overly busy. I don't know. I have that too. I love the idea of soul level medicine. What does that mean in your work? And how can people recognize when they're needing it?
Feeling just unwell, something that is not solvable by medical uh, interventions, or the usual things, just like thing really wrong on the outside, but there's something you can feel it. Sometimes it's after an experience, so a traumatic experience or an accident or an altercation or some kind of incident, and then you just don't feel quite right after. or a sense of there's just something missing, or a sense of something being with you that is not of your own, maybe feeling out of synchronicity with your life or with the world around you, this kind of thing, that's not easily identified, or maybe it's pathologized, or maybe it's, I mean, not saying that other supports can't be part of it. It should be part of it, but we can be taking care of all these sort of mainstream areas and then forget entirely about our spiritual life. And then, so when I say soul level medicine, coming from an animistic practice background, and so that's an area looking into the unseen realms is an area where we would go and address things, or have a little look at when people are not feeling quite right. And often there's something there that needs resolving. It's great and powerful and very effective, but sometimes we're missing still that physical presence, and that can be, for all sorts of benefits to have it, right? So one is just having that physical reminder. So maybe it's a painting, maybe it's a talisman, maybe it's a mug, right? Like a handmade mug or something. And if it encapsulates or represents the healing work that's been done in the other realms, in the spirit realm, then it solidifies the work that's been done. But it also is like reminding our subconscious and our consciousness, that work has been done. And again, it gives us something to hold and be like, oh, on those times where it's extra difficult, or we need just those reminders of like, no, that healing work was done, or this declaration has been made, or don't forget that this exists. And it makes it a bit more real. And I say that, in quotes, right? Just because we can see it doesn't mean that therefore it's real, but it gives us that something solid to literally hang on to. And a lot of the time, I think our human brains really like that. We have these undescribable experiences, these other realm happenings, and then to have something present and the data, or the science behind it, or this kind of thing, it really satisfies any doubts or lingering worries or things, or even accidentally going back and undoing some of the work, because it's pretty easy to hang on to the problem state rather than the resolved state. And so some of that's keeping us in that resolved state.
So tell us the origin story of how Raven Tongue came into being.
It actually just came to me because I was meeting just so many really deeply talented, wise, creative, powerful, gentle women. And I thought, geez, how great would it be if we could all just sit in a room together and glean your wisdom or hear your heart speak, and just, I felt so privileged to know the people that I did. And I was like, practicality. I thought, oh, maybe it could be a magazine. I don't know. I don't know why it came like that, but it did. And now it almost feels like a misnomer to call it a magazine, because when we think of a magazine, we think of just like kind of like trashy, throwaway, whatever, And yet there's the depth and the beauty and the raw goodness that's in the pages, but there's also the community behind it. And there's over 30 of us now. And then you expand that to readers as well. It's like, wow, we have like just such a huge community, and already, and we're just begun. And then thinking about how can we act as a community? How can we create community? How can we support each other as community? How can we leverage our collective skills and wisdom and experience? And how can we support each other? And very much like we were just talking about with entrepreneurial endeavors and things like that. And just everything from simple, just tech, like learning new tech, to business strategy. And then there's the social component. It's what we do best, right?
Yeah.
To gather and to share stories and to be present to each other. And so it seems so much bigger. And then here I'm like, oh yeah, it's a magazine.
What has surprised you the most about pulling the community of contributors together?
I know the answer to that right away. It's how I might cry. I can feel
Aw.
it. Um, it's how deeply moved and affected and charged and medicinal the experience that contributors have had, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them, at being invited to join us, to write for us, to write of something of their experience or their wisdom, of their art. And it's I was surprised by just how moved people were. Like everybody so far has been by invitation, and it really felt like I was just like going out on a limb and just shooting my shot, especially with some of these folks that are professional writers and they're busy and I have no money to offer them yet. And I'm like, this is my idea. Do you want to join? And the response, for some folks, this is the actualization of a many years long dream that they've had. Careers are already being launched and affected and bolstered, and healings are happening for people as they're writing their articles or pulling their art together. So it has this underlying medicinal quality to it that I wasn't ready for. And I get blown away by it. Well, just thinking about it. And I cannot wait to get everybody their first copies.
That's going to be such a moment, I think, for you. Like,
Yeah.
the work has been put in, you put yourself out there to approach people. This beautiful reciprocation has happened between them being honored that you asked them and you being honored that they want to participate. I'm pretty sure you're going to have a big moment when those arrive.
Well, this postal strike is, I was realizing the other day, because anybody in my region who's ordered a copy or contributed, I'm just going to deliver it by hand. And then I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I get to experience that moment of with the copies and being able to look at it with them for the first time. And some of these writers are debut writers, and it's just such a powerful moment. I'm thinking of maybe just setting up in a cafe somewhere and having everybody come together and just
Have a little party. You can document your party. Like, that works in so many ways. Not to change the loveliness of it into a business thing, but my brain always goes there. Those are
Yeah.
social media posts, and it's
Yeah.
it's a column from the editor in the next issue.
Absolutely. I mean, we do have to think that way and yeah, and keep that balance going where you're not always that's where you're going. Just always turn your camera on, always take a few photos, always take a few notes. We can look at it like Instagramming or food over much or whatever, but we can also look at it as just sharing what's happening in your life and creating connections.
I'm terrible for not ever taking pictures or recording anything. And then my grandma died in February, and I realized I hardly took any pictures, right? When she was here with my kids, like, I have lots of pictures of family gatherings when I was young, but I think only took pictures of her with them when they were newborn. And I was like, oh, we tend to, like, you see people criticizing people that are always taking pictures on their phone or recording, but I'm like, yeah, I think you have to have a balance. Yes, can you miss out on real life if you're stuck on your screen recording? Sure. But you probably want both because they're nice to look back on.
Absolutely. I find there's an artistry there as well, too, as well as preserving the memories and being able to feel into those photos again. I look at sometimes during ceremony. Normally, we don't take photos during ceremonies and things like that. But sometimes, if it's appropriate, taking a photo of an altar or a beautiful piece of cloth or some sort of atmosphere, it allows us to go back into the feeling of that place and the energy of that place and the time and the intentions that were happening. So just finding our way. It's tricky because the technology is really designed to hijack our brains.
Yes.
And so we have to keep an eye on it.
It's a balance. Like everything in life, you're looking for the balance, and it can be hard to strike. The whole way Blood Moon came about is just like this universal collapse of so many things. And I was just in such a space. And you have those weeks where you're like, and that was last week, and I have so much to do. So I was like, this is my week. I'm going to do it this week. I'm going to be productive. I'm starting off with an interview with Juliette, and then the kids are sick and it's truth and reconciliation tomorrow, and there's no school tomorrow. And so I'm like, or it's not my week. I just want to get stuff done, and I want to feel like I can have a week where I'm less productive and not have that turn into a whole 2-week or 3-week long thing.
I feel like for myself, I've adopted this saying of I want to be able to just respond to the day, whatever it is that the day is bringing me. And some of that stems from I had this wonderful period of time where I could just wake up and have my morning tea and go out into the garden and be like, oh, this is ready to harvest. And oh, this has to be replanted. And oh, I'm going to stir the dye pot. And oh, I'm going to stir the suet vat. And oh, it's raining. So I have to go and adjust water collection stuff. And, traveling through the day, responding to whatever it brought me. And I'm trying to merge that in with launching this magazine because I'm well accustomed to survival mode and having to just grind through insane amounts of work. And that's part of what led to my burnout. So I'm trying to build in better life work habits as I launch this new venture. And I'm still wanting to respond to the day. So it's, yes, I have whatever deadline, but I'm cramping and bleeding like crazy and I can't think straight. And I have to just let it go and trust that it's going to be okay. I'm learning still to get better at that.
I feel that so much because my thing is that it often feels like there's so many days where you're getting less done. And that would be fine if we didn't have to have income and get things done to survive. But I feel you on the survival mode thing. And I'm at this phase in my life where that's part of trying to build this particular business too, is that I don't want work to feel like work. Like I love all this stuff. I love doing the website and coming up with ideas for the membership areas and talking with people and creating a safe space for people to share what they're about. That's all very fulfilling and have that balance there, but also slowness. I think I spent so long when I was younger because I'm so type A where I was like, I have all these responsibilities I have to do. And I was just anxious all the time and like, go to get all this stuff that you think you have to get done. And now I'm like, I don't know. I want to have downtime. I want to have my coffee in the morning and go walk in the yard. I don't want to be like running around. And I don't want to be rushed, like looking at my kids over the last few years. I'm like, oh, it's so fast. I don't want to be stressed getting their lunch ready. I want to be able to chat with them and have our day start off nice.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky because society doesn't really support those kinds of rhythms. And I think as women, we're really driven by the cycle and the rhythms of like fullness and fallow times. And we're trying to navigate a world that really just does not honor that and instead honors overproduction and overconsumption and glorifies busyness. And it's like an unlearning and a relearning and also a resistance and just a lot to hold the background. We'll do it though. Keep going.
I'm so inspired by all the people I'm meeting and seeing similarly minded people doing these things and approaching the world and work that way. And I'm like, okay, maybe we're shifting. Bending it.
Hopefully we're shifting.
You mentioned wanting to talk about the modern witch trial of custody court. Could you share a little bit? You have a column in this issue of the magazine, I believe.
We have a column. It's for the whole 4 editions of this cycle. Yeah. That came about during our first contributor call. During that call, Lee, I had actually invited her to write about something entirely different. And during the call, just come up in conversation, we found that half of us had been through custody court and had our spiritual practices or our spiritual faiths, beliefs, whatever, used against us. And I was like, wow, out of just us, there's half of us this has happened to. And then so I asked Lee if she would be willing to write about it from her own experiences, as well as we try to include something that's also helpful for their reader if they find themselves identifying with whatever it is they're reading. And it's a lot. It's a lot to come really public with these very personal and very torturous experiences. And so I'm just so grateful that she was willing to dive into that. And yeah, and she sent in some great stuff. And I feel like that's a piece that I want to keep in some degree for as long as possible, because going to custody court is very common. And then in our circles, right, having our journals or our meditation notes or our journey, our spiritual journey notes used against us, or our witchcraft or our animistic whatever brought to the court to be scrutinized and have to defend against it. It's a very particular hell, and I don't see people really talking about it very much, and I think it needs to be.
It's just strange, right? I cannot picture it being allowed if someone were Catholic, that they would get an affidavit from the priest for what their confessions are. So it really is very specified to these types of practices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, the way things are going at the moment, particularly south of the border, I think that's only going to increase.
Yeah.
You know, some religions are covered with protections and some are not, or spiritual faith. It's pretty easy to be like, look, this person is crazy, or look, this person is unsuitable for parenting or whatever, because of practices that are actually oftentimes really quite wholesome and normal and natural, you know, not always, but you know, to have that with the bent of persecution. We need to fortify and be aware of and defend against it as best as we can. It's whole lives are changed, children's lives, women's lives, not just changed, but potentially ruined, all because somebody had a fire on solstice and ridded themselves of what was feeling too heavy and hard to hold. That's not something that is affecting parenting in any sort of negative way, and it's not relevant.
Well, solstice and equinox are marked on like every printed calendar and have been, you know, noted and celebrated, I think probably for all of time. So it's not only bizarre to twist that into something else, but the other aspect to it, to me, just to my logical brain, if I were a lawyer, is I would be like, this person, this is obviously their belief system, and you were fine with it when you married them. You were fine with it when you chose to have children with them. You were fine with it when they were likely the person taking on most of the childcare duties while you were together. And now that you're separated, it's a problem.
Well, and not all the time do we have lawyers. And that's a whole another bag, is when we don't have lawyers and we're defending ourselves or they're defending themselves. And then you have a situation where you're being cross-examined on the stand by your abuser.
Yeah.
And they're using your religion or your belief system against you.
Yeah.
You don't have anybody stepping in and going, wait, no, that's out of line. And it really can become a literal witch hunt. I call it legal abuse, like legalized abuse, legal abuse. We went 150 times.
That is insane.
I know it sounds like a made up number, right? So it's all encompassing when these situations arise, and the destruction is massive, massive.
How do you see these experiences connecting to the larger theme of silencing women's voices or reclaiming them?
For those that it's happening to, it's such a massive part of silencing, right? It's having those systems fail us again and again and again, because it's not even just the court system, which is so many systems within itself. It's the records department, and it's the actual judge, and it's so many things just there alone, lawyers, but it's also the police, and it's also victim services, and it's also counselors, and it's also teachers at school and administration at school, and it's our bosses, and it's just more systems that look on the surface as if they're doing their job, but they're really failing. And the consequence is a lot of the time we don't have a voice, and we don't have power and autonomy over the well-being of our own family. And to have such pivotal life-changing decisions in the hands of someone else sitting on the high seat there, what kind of day are they having? What are they seeing of the situation? Some of why we made it to 150 appearances was because they don't have the time or the desire to look through the docket of what else has happened. They're like, no, we will only look at what's here today. Today, you're here because your children arrived with mismatched socks, and therefore they want custody. Okay. Like literally. And I was like, okay, but can you look at all like the last years of this is a ongoing level. This is the level that we're arguing here. Nope, we won't look at that. How about looking at them not being returned after holidays for 2 weeks? Can we look at that while we're here? No, just this mismatch sucks situation. Okay. I guess we'll have another appearance. It can just grind you. And yes, I want to say it does force us into reclamations of sorts, but if we're lucky, if we survive it, if we have the years and years after to tend to our nervous systems and undo the damage in our brains. I'm not one of those people who say that everything happens for a reason and whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm just not that kind of person, because it's just not real. But can you? Yeah, you can. It can force people into their warriorship. It can force people into their voice. It can force people into standing up for themselves, whether the outcome reflects that or not. I just, in my mind, as I'm saying this, I'm remembering being in courthouse bathrooms and like doing power poses and just trying my best to like keep it together long enough to present an articulate, succinct synopsis of the situation, provide a solution. That's one thing. They always want to have a solution because then they don't have to think of one themselves, and just hold it together. Try not to cry. Have the abusive person trying to accuse you of being Looney Tunes because you talk to a guiding spirit. It's trial by fire for sure. And hopefully we make it out. But the more we can talk about it, at least we don't feel alone in it. We can begin to portray just how widespread of a situation it is. Maybe eventually the court system will shift and change somewhat. I know it already has some since I've been out, which is great. But
for any listeners who may be in their own version of this, can you share any practices or perspectives that helped you while you were enduring it?
Really finding some safe space to share what you're going through. And when I say safe space, not just comfortable space, actual safe space where people that you are with who are hearing you are not saying things like, don't worry, you'll get through this and it'll be fine. Or even just like, how can the judge do that? They can't do that. That's not right. And these are all things that seem helpful to offer somebody, but it's really not. So finding at least one other person who just hears you and sees the horrific situation and just sits with you through it. I think that's huge if it's possible. It's not always possible. I think learning as much as you can about presenting a case, how to put files together, how to put motion together or an affidavit, anything that you can learn to help yourself, really important. Other than that, it's really just taking care of your nervous system and taking care of your spiritual health as best as possible. Finding those very small hints of joy and beauty. Sometimes it can be very fleeting. I remember feeling like, oh, I feel happy. And then it lasted about, I don't know, a minute or something. And I was like, I'm going to grow that. I'm going to pay attention when I see a beautiful flower and it makes me actually feel nice. I'm paying attention to that. I'm going to grow that feeling as much as I can to balance out and really to just taking care of your spiritual health as best as possible, because it really does affect us on all of the levels. And depending on who you're dealing with, they could be acting in those realms too. And depending on the person, they may be willfully acting on those levels, or they may not be. Some disorders in those other realms, they manifest as a possession, like entity possession. And so you're dealing with a force that is a bit greater than that one person and just feeding from them and then through you as well, which in a court of law would sound totally bonkers. But I mean, these are pretty old concepts. They're not new.
No, they're not. And I just think it is for lots of people, they think it's too woo-woo, but I always bring it back to, if you're listening to your body and your thoughts and how you feel, your nervous system, like whatever box you need to put it in to conceptualize it, you can feel these things, right? Like you think about after a breakup, when your energy has been so entwined with someone, how difficult it is to really not feel them anymore. And maybe the experience is different for some. I've always felt and experienced the world this way. But for some people, maybe they don't. Maybe they're out of tune with it. But for me, on my particular situation, like trying to get back to my center was a long process.
You've probably found it too. Like when you get knocked off, slowly you get a little bit more efficient at getting back into center again. And that's where I find devotional arts can also be really helpful. Like I was saying earlier about the carding wool. It's like, even like you can take it as far as you want, even if it's just straight up, I am literally just creating order out of chaos. But you can relate it to, I am creating order out of chaos. Right? And so working in those ways, it can seem as small as stirring your cup of coffee in the morning. I'm just going to stir in peace into this day, calling it in. And I tend to, when I have a situation, like a big life situation like that, it's everything towards it. So it would be like every cup of tea, stirring in some peace into my heart, into my family, into my home, every opportunity that you can possibly equate to bringing that balance, to bringing that peace, to bringing that empowerment, to bringing that safety, to bringing that prosperity. Even you asked me about tips and things if someone is going through it right now. Don't be afraid to lay offerings down at the courthouse, the land that the courthouse is on. It can be as simple as a piece of hair. Thank you to the land for holding us and holding truth today, and really trying to embody like a sense of, I am speaking truth and I am speaking light, as opposed to like the dark chaos that can kind of storm around on the other side of the table.
I think something I absolutely love about what you're talking about is I don't have a lineage of, and I talked about this in one of the episodes, I don't have a lineage. So trying to discover what all this means and what it is has been like this big, long journey. But to me, every day is magic, everything in the world, really. Like when I talked to Monica Berdusky about this. When I look at the wall in front of me, I see it as a solid, but science has shown us that it's really not, right? There's a bunch of space in there that I can't experience in this form, but it's there. And a lot of people don't resonate with that, like how you're talking about stirring your intention into your coffee, or people are scared, like, oh, I only do a spell once every few months, or the people that are conversely, it has to be perfect and I have to follow this thing that someone else wrote down. And yes, of course, we have to be careful and there's reasons for learning prior knowledge. But oftentimes for me, it's a very in the moment, intuitive, quiet thing that just happens with my intention or where I'm at, talking to a tree or whatever it is.
I feel like some of that comes with this perception of our spiritual lives and our ordinary lives as being
Yeah.
entirely separate. And I know for myself, it's an
Yeah.
ongoing all the time. It's just together. There is not a separation. I like to challenge people to find the most ridiculous task and be like, how can you equate that to something that you're working on in your life? What big problem do you have, or what big working are you doing, or what are you calling in? What are you needing to stabilize? So maybe it's taking out the garbage, maybe it's cleaning a diaper, maybe it's, I don't know, clipping your toenails, something to find a correlation to it, because then it's responding to the day. Everything that is happening has purpose, it has meaning, and it is uniquely suited to you in your situation. You're not reading from a book like, oh, somebody else says to say these words, and if I'm doing it perfect, then it's not going to happen. And I think that's a separation that does a lot of damage.
Sorry, I'm distracted.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you
give
need
me
to...
a second? Sorry.
What's the matter? I hope you keep some of this in, I do. I hope you keep a little bit of that in, because
I tend to use them. I'd use them for clips. Like I take the outtakes and do it because I do want, there's all the marketing, but authenticity is a huge thing for me and I really value it. And, this is life.
It's real. It's real. And I think it ties into what we're talking about insofar as creating more sustainable work-life balance. Yeah. It plays into even being a single parent, right? Yeah. It plays into so many of these very real, very powerful situations that we're navigating, right? As women who are trying to have an ethical business, have good boundaries, maintain family, get an income going, like all of these things. It's just so real. And it's the kind of thing that often gets forgotten.
It's the challenge of making this dynamic work too, though, right? This is what this looks like for me. And you don't have to think about that when you have someone who is taking care of all these things and who's being flexible with their time to be the person picking people up and dropping people off and staying home when people are sick and trying to keep your mind in two places, especially when I want my energy to be present for the person. And that's what I just said outside. I was like, now my energy is distracted. Yeah. She's talking about an experience that she went through that was very hard for her. And I'm going like this to you to get you to go upstairs. It's not what I want to be doing. It's not what I want to give in that moment. But it's the reality of working mom.
It's the reality. I'm trying to keep this in mind while putting together Raven Tongue and having others and having business, and there's all sorts of deadlines and there's all sorts of criteria that need to be followed and all these things. But I'm really dedicated to trying to make a more matriarchal way of working together, more communal, where we have that ability to be like, you know what? It's okay that this deadline is being missed because you've got some kind of something happening, or only write when you're feeling like it. Don't write to the deadline. So trying to structure things that make good business sense, but also feel sustainable. It has to be sustainable. And so if to be sustainable, you need to be able to go and talk to children when they're homesick and you're trying to work, there has to be a space for that, because it's an impossible task otherwise.
Well, and I think for so long we have, as a society, structured life around work. But I do think not even just in female-led areas or spiritual-led areas, but just in general, people are at the point, life is stressful and it's very expensive and they're not willing anymore. So I think it's useful for everyone. How can we do this better? How can we let everybody have what they need? I was going to touch back because we've talked a little bit about this, but you've talked about heritage skills like the ink making, the weaving flax, the ceramics, and touched on why tangible, slow ancestral work is really vital for our time. But how do you see those practices, or do you see those practices as a remedy for living through what we're now talking about, late stage capitalism?
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I do see it as a remedy. I see it as a remedy for our nervous systems. I see it as a remedy for just societal collapse. I see it as a remedy, like you were saying earlier, you're saying I don't have a lineage. And not that I'm going to say that's not right, but you do have a lineage. You're here. You can't help but have ancestors behind you. And they're sure that they had their ways and they had their wisdoms and they had their intuitive practices, however official or unofficial. It was like, oh, Nana has a way with knowing when someone's about to come to the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everybody has a lineage. And I think when you look at some of these traditional skills and heritage crafts and things, they're just universal. Like they're universal beyond our social constructs. They're universal underneath culture differences. And so we can tap into a lineage and a legacy that is, we actually cannot fathom it because brains just can't. It's too many people, too long, too old. What is it like? Flax has been an ally for humans, working with humans. I think I'm so terrible with numbers, so I'm probably going to say the wrong number, but it's something like 36,000 years or something. I don't know. It's a long friggin' time. And so to me, I feel like there's no way that you can be working at these practices and with the intention of tuning into such things, right? Because obviously there's mass production and whatever. But there is that sense of a connection to all of humanity behind us and humanity that's going to carry forward.
Yeah.
And things arise. Like a lot of it is repetitive in that way that just allows our conscious mind to be just busy enough that we start picking up different insights or ideas or feelings or different solutions to problems. And it is balancing our nervous systems and it's helping us slow down in this world that is so the gas pedal all the way down. It allows us to just do slow work, long work. And I think there's a remedy too in the ultra long work. We're making shirts out of flax that we grew, and it's going to be multiple years before we can actually get to the shirt stage. But it allows us to think beyond. And I think that's something too that the way things are often, there's urgency all the time, and there's just deadlines and urgency and so much production, and it has to be all now, and there's no way you can ever keep up. But if you're working on something that is super slow and it's going to take you 5 years to finish, we get to have some space and some ease in that long dream. And it balances out the whole life is short. I mean, life can be short, but also life can be long, and we can have long dreams, and it doesn't have to happen right away. And we don't have to learn everything right now, and we don't have to be the best at it right away. And we don't have to get the certificates all under our belt and stuff like that. We can just spend time and regulate. And it's intrinsic to the human experience. And it just provides so much more beyond just even community. A lot of these things were done in community. So with growing flax, it's just me and my best friend, but we invite the whole communities, like, come on over. Let's sow the seeds together. Let's harvest together. Let's thresh together. Let's start winnowing. And why can't I think of the word right now?
Because you're being recorded and yeah, you're like, it's always a little bit. It's like when a guest asks me a question, I'm like, what?
Yeah. I know that, right?
I'm going to need about 5 minutes before I can answer. Just give me a second. I actually have a theory on what you're talking about with the nervous system and the like, go, go, go. Maybe it's out there. I don't know. I honestly think it's a way of stripping away our power, the agitating of the nervous system, the more that the system keeps us jumping in this. I do think it's actually meant to strip power. So that was interesting to me when you were talking about the slowdown and giving yourselves things to slow down. And the most I've learned, I think, has come from long processes. Like I wish I knew when I was younger that nothing has to be right now. And it used to feel like I remember being in my 20s and feeling like every decision carried so much weight and I had to get it right. And I'm like, but why? Like now I'm in my 40s and I'm like, oh my gosh, you could switch what you're doing a million times. You just go experience it at the moment. This is what I'm doing now. And you could be doing something else 1 year from now, 5 years, 10 years from now. Who knows that you get to experience it now? Just experience it. I would love to go back and tell 20-year-old me that.
I wonder if some of that also comes with just our age too. There is a time of being hungry for knowledge and you just soak it all up. And then there's time to let it settle and integrate. And then it comes back out again as something that's been fully processed naturally. And if I hadn't studied with other teachers, there's a lot that I would have had to learn in a much harder way, for sure.
If someone wants to start weaving the tangible into their spiritual life, what's a simple entry point?
Like I was saying before, just finding some correlation to everything that you're doing or anything that you're doing to whatever it is in your life, in your soul or practical mundane life. I always feel like folks usually have something that they're working on. So like, how can you relate it back to that? It could be even, for instance, like our call today. We're having connection. We're sharing our stories. We're living our purposes. We're living our dreams, this kind of thing. So we can put that towards whatever else we have going on in life. There's connection, there's purpose, there's witnessing, there's storytelling, there's wisdom being had. And so putting that towards whatever it is you're working on, brushing your teeth, you're just clearing the whatever, maybe negative self-talk, just like brushing it, spitting it right out. And it's like, okay, I'm going to work on this negative self-talk. Every time I brush my teeth, I'm spitting out that habit, something like that. Just find the most ordinary stuff and then find that correlation to what you're working on in the grander scheme.
You mentioned in your forms that you were having a fire ceremony and a photojournalist came. What did that experience teach you about vulnerability and showing up publicly?
That was a pivotal moment for me. We were having a community-wide winter solstice fire ceremony. And it was in the before stages. The fire hadn't been lit yet, and we were gathered. And a fellow walked in from the front door, and he's got his cameras and everything. Like, hi, I'm from the paper. Can I take some photos? And I looked at all the people in front of me, and they're just like, what is happening? And I had a split moment to make a decision, speaking of urgency and stuff, but this time it worked out great. And I said, sure, but you have to join us. You can't just sit there taking photos removed. You have to participate in this fire ceremony. And thinking back, I probably should have asked everybody if they were okay with it and all that. And it turns out a couple of people weren't. What can you do? But it got it into the newspaper and beautiful photos and a beautiful write-up. And then successive solstices, it became a very public mainstream topic. And it really called me anyways to be more public about what can often be very private practices because it's not always accepted by everybody. And how that, again, it creates that community for people who have no community.
You talk about sovereignty on your intake forms. How do you cultivate sovereignty within community?
Sovereignty within community. I feel like a lot of what we've spoken about it really is that. It's reclaiming our sovereignty and not in an isolated and not isolating. Sovereign doesn't mean isolated. It just means that you've got all of your parts together. You have a voice, you have some grounded, solid, sustainable livelihood and also with community. I feel like it's just such a big piece that's missing right now, especially for women, but for a
Yeah.
lot of people. Like you're saying, our sovereignty is being taken away from just social constructs to failing systems. And then also these things that are meant to bring us together a lot of the time, they're actually keeping us more isolated. And so being able to have those face to face, or even if it is digital, at least having it heartfelt and present.
Me, sovereignty is like a standing in your own power thing too. I mean, you can look at it from the economic sense, but
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look at it as like standing in the sacred center of the circle when you're in right relation to all that is around you. We might get knocked off of there, but we can get back to it.
what are you most excited about creating right now?
I'm really excited for Raven Tongue and where else it can go. Magazine wise, yes. And also communally. And I'm actually excited for being a couple of more editions in so that the systems are all in place and everything's been figured out a little bit. And then I can get back to more of a ebb and flow where there is the space to just be walking in the garden and going, oh, this is right for the pickings. And oh, it's sunny day. So I'm going to fix the leak in the roof and be able to have that spaciousness to tend to what's needed when the time is present, when it's the right time. I'm looking forward to that. I really want to get back to my spinning. I'm behind in my spinning. behind. I have a mountain of wool to spin. I'm in the middle of, I don't know how many years it'll take, but it's a wizard coat. And I call it a wizard coat because of all the intentions and things that are going into it. That it's being processed from local sheep and hand dyeing it with plants and spinning it and then weaving it. And I'm excited to get back to that because Raven Tongue's really taken all of my attention. Since I think March, I've been full on.
The coat sounds amazing. I chickened out on pulling a tarot card for Monica. I was like, I'm not going to chicken out on pulling a tarot card.
I am glad that you didn't.
You got the Magician, which I think is very fitting.
Nice. Holding the flame.
Yeah. Creation, empowerment.
Good work. Yeah, I like that.
Is there a word, phrase, or symbol that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Slow roots is what came in that moment. Just like that, real slow, grounded, slowing down, getting right rooted into the earth, calming everything, taking a breath. That's it.
You can read for yourself the insights, articles, and magic inside of Raven Tongue magazine by heading to their website, raventongue.com, to purchase a subscription or an issue. You can also keep up with Raven Tongue behind the scenes on their Instagram at Raven Tongue Publishing. For more of Blood Moon Radio or to support us through donations and purchases, head over to bloodmoonradio.com. We appreciate you being here and any support you give us from shares, likes, subscriptions, or purchases. And until next time, remember, the truth echoes louder after dark. Whispered, unfiltered, waiting to be touched. See you soon.